Welcome back to On the Hubgrass. This week we'll be going over our thoughts and opinions of the 50th anniversary celebration in light of what we all know happened at the 25th anniversary celebration 25 years ago. Also, to look forward to on the podcast as well on the YouTube channel is we have quite a few episodes planned out for the next couple of weeks. Next week we'll be going over our travel tips, especially in light of the travel season coming up in June. And then after that, we will be going over our thoughts and opinions of the new Avengers campus at Disneyland, or really California Adventure. So, as always, I have my illustrious co-host Mason here today, as always, to talk about all things Disney here on the Hubgrass. So, Mason, how is your week going this week?
Oh, well, for Monday, it's interesting. It's
Yeah,
definitely it's been an interesting week so far. A lot going
perfect.
on, a lot of exciting things coming our way within the Disney front for a lot of new attractions going to be opening soon. A lot of new um, just a lot of anticipation coming our way, especially in the next couple of
Definitely.
months on both coasts.
Yes, yes. Well, definitely. I think that's a good way to start out this conversation. Is that really what we saw a couple years ago at D23, kind of preparing us for the 50th celebration? Is that we had a lot of hopes and dreams for what was going to happen at Disney World during this magical celebration, and at D23 we were told all about the Epcot overhaul and
Yeah,
Tron, the continuation of work on that, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. Remy was, I think,
yeah.
at least underway or planned at that point, but we knew that was coming up
Oh yeah.
soon. Obviously, the pandemic hit, and that kind of changes timelines for a lot of things. But obviously, what we've been told so far is that all we're getting for the 50th is Remy and some decorations. So, I guess, what are your thoughts right now on what we know is coming during the 50th, and what are some things that you are hoping might be like some surprises that will open or at least be
Mhm.
added onto the celebration?
Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like we've aged. Um, we, like in the past year, I've aged 3 years, and all the that announcement stuff feels like a lifetime ago. Like I feel like
Hmm.
I'm mentally I'm in my 30s now, and if I got on the scale, probably physically I'm in my 30s as well. But the, yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy looking at all of the things that were being announced for the 50th
Hmm.
back then, and how they've had to drastically
Yeah.
reframe and reshape how the whole event is going to be. Because it was supposed to be, I'm assuming originally it was going to be as of January 2021 to throughout the whole year. Was the 50th celebration, with of course the highlight being October 1st. But
Sure.
now they've had to reshape it. Well, okay, now we're not celebrating until October 1st, and then it's going to go for a year and a half, or
Hmm.
whatever. So
Yeah.
there's just been a whole shift, and I'm interested to see how they're going to continue to play catch up, because I don't think they're done playing catch up yet.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not sure if they would have started out January 1st if things were normal. I have no problem with it starting on the October 1st, going till the 18th months until 2023. Um, I think that's fine. I think it's a celebration of the opening of Disney World on October 1st, and actually even the anniversary of Epcot. But I think that it should have. I have no. I really don't care when it started. I just wanted. My thing is that I'm really disappointed in what we're getting, because it's the motto for this celebration is the world's most magical celebration, and I don't really feel like it's going to be super magical. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of things during the pandemic, and I really hope that in these months leading up to October 1st, is we get a lot of those things back. We lost Streetmosphere, a lot of entertainment is gone, that have often been kind of the hallmarks of a really special vacation, and those aren't going to be there as of what we know right now. And then what we are getting is a ride at Epcot, and then these beacons of magic, where they have been adding these permanent light fixtures on Spaceship Earth, as well as these additional pieces of decoration, and obviously the full recolor of Cinderella's castle, and then the projection shows on the Tree of Life, as well as the Tower of Terror. So beyond that, that's all really know we're getting at this moment, outside of some additional iridescent colorations across the park and the new costumes for some of the characters. But a lot of things like Remy, Tron, well, we are getting Remy, but Tron and Guardians aren't going to be part of that celebration. So I feel for especially fans of us that are a big part of our experiences, the rides and the entertainment, is that right now we don't know much of what's going to be added. That's going to be unique to the celebration.
Yeah, and I think they've at least from my perception of it, they've played it kind of low on the like low key on the details. So I mean, I don't
Sure.
know if because I think it's possible that um, the event could be kind of sprinkled throughout this year or year and a half that
Yeah.
they're going to be celebrating. So you know,
Hmm.
you might have Remy at the beginning, then Tron halfway through, then at the very end you can have Guardians, which I'm probably the most excited about. Guardians, I know Tron's a big deal with
I
over
I
in
agree.
Shanghai, yeah, and
Tron, yeah, in
I mean it
Shanghai.
looks really cool, but
Yeah.
I think I think it might be possible that they'll be sprinkling it out, but they just don't want to be
Hmm.
too committed to any timeline right
Yeah.
now, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think they've kind of learned their lesson, because I think they're taking a book or a page out of Universal's book, where Universal definitely under announces and over delivers, where Disney recently has been announcing everything and then just like all of a sudden, like, well, that's delayed or that's not happening anymore. And they kind of overexert themselves, and that's just kind of always been a problem in the
Yeah.
company, is them over announcing things and under delivering. Obviously, with the debacle of MGM, and Eisner announcing everything and nothing happening. But um, I hope they're, yeah. I
That
really
was
hope
a whole
they're learning their
different ball
lesson
game with
finally.
Eisner. He's like, "We're gonna do this. We're gonna
Yeah,
let's get West hot."
yeah, yeah. I really hope that they kind of learn a lesson, and um, are looking at what they did with Velocicoaster in Universal, where no one knew anything. They like were building it, building it, building it, and it wasn't until like the few months prior to them finishing the project that they say, "Hey, we have this new Jurassic World roller coaster, and this is what it is." Obviously, you knew
Yeah.
what it was. You had an idea what it was due to per its location, but um,
Hmm.
obviously they
Oh, I
didn't tell you
remember.
exactly what it was.
Yeah, I remember watching like, and this feels like forever ago now, but watching like Tim Tracker, and he would give updates on that happening as they
Oh, sure.
started construction on it, and it's crazy thinking now. But I wonder how much we would have heard about it if COVID wasn't part of the equation, because I feel like we started coming out of it,
That's fair.
and once the park started opening, it was almost done, and that's when we started hearing things, you know?
Yeah, yeah, but things like Tron and Guardians and things like that, we've known about those for
Mm.
years, years and years, and they
Yeah.
hadn't broke ground yet. And I think Tron is definitely the closest comparison between it and Velocicoaster, because they're both pretty basic roller coasters. There's nothing too, obviously Velocicoaster is a very intense roller coaster, and Tron itself isn't much of a very intense roller coaster versus well, beyond the novelty of you being on a bicycle or on a light bike, or light cycle, my bad. And so seems like a pretty
We'll get there.
easy ride to build, especially because it's a clone. If it wasn't a clone, maybe I have a little bit more leniency on them, but it's a clone. And so Imagineering has had the plans for a long time on how to build this roller coaster, and it should have been a really easy copy and paste job, versus Universal, who put together a unique roller coaster. Obviously, they hired out a team to build the roller coaster itself, and then their
Yeah.
team went through into the theming. So, in terms of Universal doing work themselves and Disney doing work themselves, I think they're on a level playing field, because where Universal hired out a team to design the roller coaster, Imagineering had already built this roller coaster once. And I think Tron is definitely the saddest exclusion from these recent announcements, because it's an actual ride attraction in Magic Kingdom, which is the flagship of Disney World, and then really the true 50-year-old park is Magic Kingdom. And so to have nothing new in Magic Kingdom for the 50th is kind of sad, in my opinion, because like it's your 50th anniversary. I have also been talking about this kind of like a marriage anniversary, where like you tell your wife like 6 months in advance, like, I have this big day planned for you. We're doing X, Y, Z, and then the day comes and it's like, oh, we're going to Olive Garden, where you told her you're going to like take her to like the Bahamas or whatever. Obviously, in this scenario, Disney kind of lost their job and couldn't afford to take her anymore, but Disney has enough money to do all these things. So. So that's kind of my perception on it, is that nothing is really special outside of the castle being painted at this point that we know of in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. 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 Honestly, I feel like I knew more happening for Disneyland's 60th a couple of years back than this. So,
Yeah.
and even what last year, there was like a bunch of 65th anniversary merch
Yeah.
that was out in like regular stores.
hmm
So it's really weird now, but I don't know, and I feel like at a certain point you have to stop blaming COVID. But you know,
Yeah. No, I agree.
I don't know, and maybe that's just because I'm
Yeah.
tired of
And
of blaming COVID.
no, definitely,
But yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and I think it
yeah,
comes down to how Disney treated their cast members, how they handled their maintenance cast members, how they handled their construction cast members, where
well,
they laid them all off for many months, and all these things are
yeah,
delayed. And we know that Universal did it in a very safe manner, hence why, or at least safe enough that their teams felt confident enough to build things and to keep the park up during that time, where we came back from COVID and People Mover was still down. Tron had hardly made any progress in the Magic Kingdom. So to say that they couldn't done work during COVID, I think people wanted to work, especially construction guys wanted to work, and Universal kept their guys on, and Disney didn't. And so that's a whole different conversation of how Disney treated their cast members versus Universal.
mm.
But
Well,
yeah,
wait. Well, I mean,
and yeah, go ahead.
if you think about it, and I'm just thinking about this now, it's crazy because Remy, I feel, has gone up really quick, the Ratatouille ride, and
hmm
that's also a clone.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right, and I think the difference between Remy and Tron is that Remy is screens mainly,
Well,
with a few
yeah,
set pieces, so it's a lot easier to paint a projection screen versus putting together actual like
yeah, I
pieces of
guess you're right.
like heavy
I
duty
guess you're right.
construction. Um, I think that's one thing, and and I think the ride vehicles have been done for a long time as well, which again is the key part of that ride. Whereas Tron is like you have to make sure that you build this in a way that the physics are sound and the construction is solid, so people don't die. um, it's a lot easier, yeah, like I said, to put together a flat ride than it is to put together a roller coaster. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and I think I've heard some recent calls on Twitter and things like that of like what Disney could have done on a short notice that would have really made us happy. And I think
Hmm.
one of those things is bringing back Streetmosphere, bringing back entertainment. That's a pretty easy one to bring back, and I
Oh
hope
yeah.
in the next couple months that we do hear more about that, and to
Yeah.
kind of either spruce up or bring some nostalgia into those classic attractions that we all love. I think it'd be really great to if they had gone through and just put a fresh coat of paint on. I think they still have time on a lot of the rides, so they look kind of with how they looked day one. And I think what they did with the Three Caballeros finally coming back to Mexico is that they basically reconstructed some of these animatronics to look like they were functioning from day like they were day one or even better. And I wish they would have gone through and done or would do that with Carousel of Progress, um, gone through
Yeah.
spruced up the Country Bears, things like that to make them look like they did day one.
Well, and the kicker is those animatronics were part of a day one attraction, weren't they? Weren't they part of like the Mickey Mouse Review or some sort of
Correct.
show? That's where
Hmm.
Philhar Magic is now.
Correct. Yep.
So that's sort of the kicker to it. And they look gorgeous. They do look gorgeous.
No, yeah, they
I
look
think
awesome.
Jose is
I
the
was
best
pleasantly surprised
looking.
with all that.
Do you have a
Yeah.
favorite of the three?
Um,
Not
what was
from like
that?
just in general, I mean.
Say that one more time.
Oh, just like in general, not like how they look. But like, do you have a favorite of the three caballeros?
Um, I love Jose. Jose's really great. Obviously Donald. I like all three of them honestly.
Oh well,
Um,
yeah,
I don't know if I really favor one or the other, but um, yeah, I think um, they're great to have on that ride. I honestly thought for a long time that, especially when we saw the cardboard go up, that that ride was going to go down for a long time, and we would see Coco put in there.
yeah,
I thought the
yeah.
writing was on the wall for it. Especially with those animatronics going down. I think the future of potentially having Coco in there is farther down the road. I always thought that when they had um, the pavilion at Epcot where they're showing Epcot overhaul having very much a strong Coco presence in the Mexico pavilion, at least the way it was modeled. I thought it was for sure going to be announced soon, especially with
Yeah, I think
the
they had just had
the
even when
seeming
they
fall
announced
of
that. Yeah.
yeah. Go
Um,
ahead.
but the we're still working out the kinks. We're still working out the kinks.
Yes.
No, but what I think they just didn't. I think that is in the future. I just think they, even when they announced all this stuff, they had so much on their plate. I don't think they could have
Definitely.
handled another, and especially now. But even announcing those, they couldn't have handled plussing that up also in time for the 50th. You know?
No, yeah, I think you're right, and I think if Coco was announced at that D23 presentation and officially part of the Epcot overhaul, it probably would have gone the way of what we saw with Cherry Tree Lane, just being just yeah, it's not going to happen now or if ever potentially. I think Coco would have
Yeah.
been part of that list of being being rolled back for budgetary purposes to make sure that they could do the overhaul within their budget or at least their time constraints, whatever that is. Actually, I have no idea, but um, yeah, I do like the movie Coco a lot. Would like to see, obviously their presence is growing in the Mexico Pavilion. They deserve to be there, but I think I really love the three Caballeros in that attraction. So I don't know if they kind of find a way to meld the two IPs or what, but I'll be
Yeah.
sad when if and when those three leave.
It would be cool if if they just made it, if they did end up making it completely Coco, if in the background they were like kind of a Dia de los Muertos skeleton
Oh yeah,
version, kind of strumming in the background in one scene, it would be
yeah.
really like they always
That
do
would be
those
fun
send ups of yeah.
no
But
for
yeah,
sure.
it's I think it's one of, if not the most popular pavilion there. I have a side question off
For
of this,
sure.
but yeah, I think yes, it's just the one of the. I just always see it packed, either just for the food, for the drinks, for whatever.
Mhm.
I think it's one of, it's because it's so important. They got to be very careful. But side question off of that, what is your favorite pavilion? Out of curiosity, if you
Um,
have one.
yeah. So I love. So my go to lunch spot whenever I'm in Epcot, I go to Via Napoli. My wife and I love that place. So for food, I love Italy. But for drinks, I love Mexico. um, so I would say either one of those pavilions. Um, yeah, I love Mexico for the food and the caballeros like that. I do really enjoy that ride. And then, like I said, love the Italy Pavilion for Via Napoli. The Italy Pavilion in all total, I can't for me can't be my favorite because there's not much going on there in general. Um, so you put me on the spot. Um, yeah, I would have to say probably. Yeah, I would have to say either Mexico and I also like Germany a lot. Um, yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
What is yours? Because let me think about that more while you answer.
Um, I would say of. See, the thing is, my wife really
It's not
opens
easy.
me up
It's
to the
not
world
easy.
showcase. Oh no, no, no! You're at no. I
Yeah.
gave you a dirty hand because it's not
Yeah.
easy, and I didn't expect you to have anything specific, um, because I don't really, because my wife really opened me up to. She's an Epcot girl,
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
she really yeah, and she really got me invested in all the different pavilions.
Sure.
So there's things about each of them I love, except for China. Probably I still don't get the appeal of
Yeah.
the China
Oh,
pavilion is the one
well,
that I just never have.
yeah. Well, I will say kind of piggybacking off that, I do like Japan a lot. I love the food there. I'm
Oh
really
yeah.
excited to go to Teppanyaki
Hmm.
because I recently have gotten into Japanese culture a lot recently. I actually just started watching anime
Yeah.
in the past like few months, which is
Okay.
I was shocked that I've liked it so much.
What are you
I'm
watching?
sure we'll talk off. I'm sure we'll talk off podcast about what um, about some anime because it sounds like you're a fan too. Um,
No,
but
not at all. But I'm interested in what you're interested in.
I love the shopping. Oh, okay, never mind then. No, but I love the shopping in Japan. Um, I
Yeah.
think the shop is really cool as a um,
Hmm.
90s fan of Nintendo and a lot of those things that you wouldn't expect to find at a Disney park are there, which is really cool. And also just being a fan of Tokyo Disneyland. Just find a way to kind of
Yes.
immerse myself in that culture a little bit. In preparation, to hopefully one day go to that park. So
Oh
um,
yeah. One day.
let's say those are my top
Um,
top three pavilions.
I
Mexico for the
yeah. Go.
complete pavilion, Italy for food, and then Japan for the shopping. But sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, I recently, within the last year, I really got into Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki films.
Oh,
So
cool.
going to, yeah, going to Japan and seeing all of the different,
Yeah.
Spirited Away merchandise, Totoro
Oh, for
uh,
sure.
merchandise. Yeah, all that. It was really cool. Couldn't afford any of it, but it was cool to
Yeah.
look at.
Yeah.
Um, and um, yeah, so probably for me, top three, I would put, yeah, I would say Mexico, then I would say Japan as well. But then I would actually, this is one's probably like the most underdog one. Morocco. I really liked the
Okay.
Moroccan pavilion.
Okay.
Uh,
Cool.
yeah, I really liked it. I liked it more when they had the weird before they
Penis wall.
removed the weird penis. Yeah, the
Yeah.
penis wall. I didn't know if we were allowed to say that on the show.
No, yeah, go
So
for it. It's anatomy.
yeah, sure. Um, so yeah, um, but yeah, I really got. I think maybe 2014. I went on a trip there, and
Hmm.
to Epcot, and we had lunch there one day, and I
Yeah.
just fell in love with that pavilion. It's just so beautiful. The food, I love shawarma. I loved it before Avengers. So,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, it's just a neat spot. I wish it got more
Yeah.
love. I wish there was an attraction there that people would get drawn in by. But I wish that probably for
Definitely.
every pavilion. Um, but yeah, those are
Yeah.
probably my top three.
No, and like I said, I think that could, I was just about to say that I think that could be a whole episode about us talking about what rides we'd like to see in each pavilion because I think I would agree. I really hope one day
Yeah,
we live in an Epcot where each pavilion has an attraction,
yeah,
whether it be a walkthrough attraction or I know Morocco has sort of a walkthrough attraction, but um, even seems like basic attractions.
yeah. And
There's a
so
lot of
does.
really interesting attractions planned for Epcot initially
Mhm.
at each pavilion. Obviously, they haven't panned out, but unfortunately, I haven't really been to Morocco that much. It's always always a pavilion kind of walk past, going somewhere else. But I'll have to check it out next time I'm there,
Yeah,
based off that
yeah,
recommendation.
yeah. And doesn't what's it called? Doesn't Japan have like a walkthrough? They have a whole like a little kawaii
Yeah.
exhibit as well there. That's pretty great.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I
Oh yeah,
kind of mentally it's like part of the shops because it's a lot of that same stuff is in the shop, or at least
yeah,
similar
yeah. It
merchandise
definitely
is.
bleeds together.
Yeah, definitely. Um, but yeah, and I think that leads into more 50th talk getting over to Epcot is because we might see Harmonious happening during the 50th, which I have skeptical hopes for.
Yeah,
Um, those barges are interesting to me. I think they have the potential being really neat if they function properly.
yeah,
But I think it's interesting that with this anniversary, looking at the 25th anniversary, is that Illuminations 25 was also debuted around the time of the 25th anniversary at
yeah.
Disney World, which is kind of an interesting parallel that the Epcot was getting a new show, or at least a variant of a show, and during the 25th anniversary, and now we're seeing Epcot potentially during the 50th anniversary also get a brand new show, um,
Hmm.
which um, Illumination 25 led up to one of the greatest theme park nighttime shows of all time, whereas
Oh, yeah,
Illuminations is
absolutely.
or not Harmonious is trying to live up to that hype and that love that everyone had for Illumination. So bringing in these new technology. Many will argue that it's ruining the sightlines and kind of the feel of World Showcase, but it's an interesting parallel there for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm imagining that the upkeep on the those barges is going to be a bear. Because
Yes,
just because
for
of all
sure.
the moving parts, it's like a giant. I feel like a supervillain took over the lagoon or something, and he's got some
Yeah.
crazy machine. But yeah, I'm excited about the show. I'm not that worried about the barges and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's an interesting point you make about the change happening at the 25th and happening here with the new
Hmm.
shows premiering. But yeah, I mean, there was a there. It's crazy looking back at the 25th. The
Hmm.
um, just the overall. I I feel like you couldn't get away from the hype for the
Yeah.
25th because it was
Hmm.
like there were commercials in your VHS tapes. There was commercials everywhere for it. For do you remember the magic?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't watch old commercials in my spare time.
Yeah, and we both you and I were about uh, we were like 3 years old at the time when the celebration first began. And think it's interesting that the 25th also began on the first, and then went for 16 months versus 18 months. Um, and I was doing some research today about the 25th, and I was looking at it, I was like, well, they didn't get a whole lot in terms of new attractions. That is true. So
Mhm.
like obviously we began the show talking about how we're not getting anything new for the 25th in terms of attractions, and they and the 25th didn't as well. The only thing they got new in terms of actual like physical things was Mickey's Toontown was introduced for the 25th. So they got a new
Really, that
land.
was that year?
It was, yeah. It was new for the
Wow.
anniversary, and so obviously Mickey's Toontown was basically a big meet and greet. There was a couple rides in there, um, so like I guess they did get some new rides with I think Goofy. Um, the early days of Barnstormer, I believe, was a part of that, and then there's a playground um, on Donald's boat for that. So there was a brand new land for the 25th, which is interesting. Um, and kind of exciting, but
That's
nothing
exciting.
like major. It was obviously it was a land expansion, so or a new land added, which I think is great. But it wasn't like a big. It wasn't like a massive addition like we were hoping to see with Tron. But
Yeah.
the glaring difference, and I think we kind of touched upon it earlier about how there's no entertainment, or at least right now there's no entertainment, is that for
Yeah.
the 25th they um, unveiled a new parade back then, and then they introduced a new performing style of stop action. Was where now we see it a lot where performers get off the floats, or there's performers around the floats, um, kind of performing a scene, things like that. We saw Illuminations 25 also added during the 25th, and then there was also at that time we had Fantasy in the Sky and Spectre Magic being the fireworks show and the nighttime parade. Where right now at Magic Kingdom we have no entertainment period in terms of extravaganzas, nighttime shows, anything like that, parades. Obviously, we have the cavalcades and things like that, but it's not Festival of Fantasy or anything like that. There's been no
Hmm.
announcements of any kind of new parade during the day, and so I think what a lot of us are wanting from the 50th, and like I said earlier, we got from the 60th was kind of pulling on those nostalgic heartstrings, and um, I think a big part of the a day at Magic Kingdom are the parades. We lost a lot with not having a nighttime parade, and now we don't really know where we are with a nighttime show or a nighttime fireworks show. Um, I
Yeah.
personally would love to see Happily Ever After come back. I love Happily Ever After, but we've been hearing all
He's great.
these.
Yeah.
Yes, we've been hearing all these potential this new nighttime show. I know the code names like Project Nugget, which we've heard nothing about. Um, so if they do want to bring in
That's
a
the first
brand
I'm
new
hearing about that
nighttime
one.
show, what was that?
That's the first I'm hearing about that one. The
Oh,
Project
really?
Nugget.
Yeah, yeah. Project Nugget. So it's supposed to be like the 50th anniversary fireworks show, and I believe it was probably shortly after the parks reopened. They were doing some fireworks testing at Magic Kingdom. People were assuming that it was Imagineers kind of selecting the new shells for the new nighttime show, but internally it's been called Project Nugget. It's been the code name for it, and it's supposed to be, like I said, the 50th anniversary fireworks show, and we've heard nothing. So either that was canned or like you said before, they might do this like the slow roll throughout the whole um,
Mm-hmm.
through the whole
Yeah.
anniversary celebration. That'll be kind of a surprise one night or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I know with the 25th, there were, yeah, like you said, those stops where they would stop and,
Hmm.
if I'm remembering correctly, they would stop and actually interact with people at that point.
Hmm.
Um,
That's
I
right.
might, it might, that might be later on in the line. I think, but if my memory serves me correctly, I think I mentioned earlier in another episode, um, the only other episode at this point, that I was obsessed with Captain Hook. So I saw him in the parade, and I was like, again, I was what, 5 at the time, so I
Yeah.
was out, waving, trying to get his attention, and at that point, that was before he got the 100 Years of Magic
Oh, sure.
remodel or whatever, and
Yeah.
he had that really creepy scowl that he had for like the first
Yeah.
40 years or whatever. So he just completely just breezed past me. It was like it broke my heart. And so just
Yeah.
then the parade stopped, and Peter Pan jumped off, and I guess what they did was they had the kids walk around or dance around the float with these flags, and he grabbed me, and it was like,
Oh, yeah,
come
yeah,
on, you
yeah.
don't need that old codfish. And we did this whole thing, all these kids. um
Yeah.
and it I always thought that was cool. I know they don't really do that anymore, where they get involvement from the kids for safety reasons, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I do miss that.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
when I was there a couple years ago, around Christmas time, some of the dancers like came out and like interacted with the kids like right there on the sidewalk. But yeah, them like actually bringing them out onto the parade route, I think is definitely, unfortunately, a way of the past. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think all of this comes down to we just want to be entertained and feel like we're at like a big party, and I would definitely feel less burnt by the misstep with the timing of the attractions if we were actually given entertainment and given some things to do by just experiencing the park and feeling that energy that we all kind of fell in love with. Where right now it's kind of all about waiting in line and going to buy merch and not so much about immersing the guests in the celebration
Yeah.
anymore, or at least what they've announced. And I really hope that kind of the optimistic perspective that you have is that they roll it out throughout the year. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think part of it's going to be frustrating for guests because it's like, oh, I came on the first, I came on the actual anniversary day, but all the fun stuff is going to be available at the very end. And for some families that go once a year, the end of the celebration could be, they could be there twice during the celebration, which is a potential. And obviously, we'd have all of that stuff post celebration, a lot of those
Hmm.
attractions. But I think to having some kind of exclusive thing that occurs during the 50th. I saw even today bounced around on social media that people would love to see maybe the Country Bears, that we see the other alternate shows of the Country Bears happen during the 50th, just during the 50th as kind of a special tag onto the original show. I think one of them
Yeah,
is
that'd be
the
great.
Summer Vacation. I think Summer Vacation is one of them. And there's a holiday one as well. Is it's one of those things where they basically you just reprogram the bears and put a new costume on, and then you just go. And I think it's one of those very low budgetary changes that would really make a lot of difference into kind of splashing that nostalgic feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, even with what you said, with it being about the merch, and
Hmm.
like the rollout of the merchandise, that's I went in March, and a lot of the merch is just rough right now. Really
Yeah.
basic, boring. Like whatever they, I feel like they like had to get rid of half their team because 4 years ago there was some great merch that they had coming out. At the
Yeah.
the co-op, the marketplace co-op,
Oh,
they
sure.
had the 28th in Maine, I think it was. It's a little
Hmm.
store. And it was, it's more men's clothing there, but it always
Yeah.
had cool stuff. And it had
Yeah.
a lot of niche jokes, or not niche jokes, but niche kind of designs and references.
Hmm.
Um, and they were really cool. Everything, there had, there was an appeal to. And I went there last time, and it was just the same stuff that was in the world of Disney, or
Hmm.
or just like the same stuff I could find at Target, frankly. And there's
Yeah.
just
No,
been a
definitely.
real decline in the quality of
Yeah. Yeah.
of the
And I
merchandise.
think, yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, and because I typically don't buy much. I buy merch at Disney, but I don't typically buy a lot of clothing from Disney anymore. Just because I feel like it's like you said, very bland, very typical, kind of Target style
Except their
clothing,
sweaters.
which
The
is
sweaters are on
yeah,
point.
yeah. Is that one from Disney itself?
Yeah, this is from like the Oh My Disney collection. This I got at the Disney
I'm
store.
shocked
It
because
was
like
on
because
clearance.
I love that sweater, and I could have sworn you bought it
Yeah.
from like Hot Topic or Boxed Lunch, because it's very unique and
It
in
definitely
my
looks like a box lunch. And box lunch, I
yeah.
feel like, is now that a lot of the Disney stores are going away. I feel like Target, because we talked about this, like
Hmm.
on one of our first calls together.
Yeah.
Target is becoming like the main outlet for Disney
Hmm.
merch, but Box Lunch has the really good stuff.
No,
Box
definitely. No,
Lunch,
definitely.
and if you yeah, for the listeners, if you don't know what box lunch is, uh, it is sort kind of it's run by the same company that owns Hot Topic. So it's that
Hmm.
kind of a setup, but it's all like adult pop culture stuff. So there's like a whole wing that's just fun Disney stuff, and it's really good quality stuff.
Definitely.
And then Marvel, Star Wars, anime, um, and
Harry Potter.
DC, Harry Potter, and then I
Hmm.
think like every however many dollars they donate a lunch to like a local food
I think it's $10.
or food hall or something like that. Then
Hmm.
that's why they call it box lunch. I think
Yeah.
I need to. I
Yes.
don't have all my facts.
No,
I'm
that's
a
correct.
fraud.
And what I was going to say, and I think this might come up in our video next week or podcast next week about travel tips, is that
Mhm.
I typically don't buy from Box Lunch or buy from Disney anymore for in terms of clothing. Like my trip clothes, I typically buy like kind of a whole new wardrobe, or at least a new shirt for every day I'm there. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I like to kind of buy a shirt or something that's themed to the park I'm going to, is I don't go to Shop Disney anymore to buy that kind of stuff. I typically go to Box Lunch, Hot Topic. For Star Wars stuff, there's this really great website called Heroes and Villains that comes out with some really great merchandise. And
Oh,
the thing about
fantastic.
merchandise that I like to buy is I like to feel like it's either in world in a way, or not so much like
Hmm.
cosplay bounty, but like something that would have like felt like someone like in that world would have worn, or something that was produced by that world. One of my favorite shirts, and it has been worn to death, is that when I went to Hollywood Studios a couple years ago when I was there for Christmas, is that I had like it was like a soccer jersey, but it said it was like a Pizza Planet like sponsored like soccer jersey that had like the Star Command logo embroidered on the top with the screen printed red Pizza Planet on it, and it had like
Yeah.
this like red piping on all the seams and things like that. And I love that, and that's something that Disney would not create anymore. And I was listening
No.
to a video or watching a video on TikTok by one of the he he was one of the executives that was involved in Disney Infinity, and he
Oh
said
yeah.
that, yeah, I love that guy. I think this stuff is really awesome. And he was saying that
Yeah. Really interesting.
The reason that Disney ended Disney Infinity was they were looking at no longer being part of the video game world. They just want to focus on their licensing, and I think that's become really been really apparent with their clothing and and merchandise is that they've been really good about licensing out to creative people, whereas they don't really have much creative anymore in the merchandise department at Disney itself. And like I said, I really see that with a lot of the clothes that I buy.
Yeah, and with that specifically, the Toys to Life kind of bubble sort of popped because
Also, that
I
is
know
also
there were
true.
a lot of those Toys to Life games that just tanked. I myself had Lego Dimensions for a hot minute. Um,
Oh yeah,
and sometimes I just got them for the figures. I
the
got a
figures. Yeah.
Beetlejuice out of it, so
Oh nice.
yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and,
no, he's
and
got some great content.
no, he does. He does. And like you said, well, kind of on a similar vein, is I hope they come up with some good merchandise for the 50th. Some
Hmm.
really nostalgic stuff. And I really hope they really lean into their merchandise partners so you can bring out some really great things like Funko, like some of those clothing retailers to really produce some vintage feeling things. Um, yeah, and I really hope that we get some really great stuff for the 50th in terms of just
Yeah.
merchandise beyond just iridescent T-shirts and iridescent ears and things like that. I really hope that we get some callbacks to some nostalgic things that we all really enjoyed in our childhoods
Hmm.
and even in the history of Disney World.
Yeah, and it's the 50th, so if there was a time to be cashing in on people's nostalgia for
Hmm.
all of the attractions that have been kind of lost along the way, now's the time to have
No,
an
that's all for sure.
extraterrestrial or a a alien encounter T-shirt,
Yeah.
a Dreamfinder T-shirt, Horizons, that
Oh,
stuff.
for sure.
Now is the because if not now,
If
when?
Dreamfinder's not, yeah, we riot. Yeah, if Dreamfinder's not,
Yeah.
if I don't get a Dreamfinder Funko Pop during the 50th, I riot. Um, I think
Oh.
one of the greatest things that came out of this because I collected some of the 65th anniversary merchandise from Disneyland, and I'm a pop
Mhm.
collector, and they had some really great Funko Pops. I got the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, him in the actual Toadmobile, Peter Pan in the ride vehicle, and I also got Minnie and Dumbo and things like that.
Yeah.
They really gave us
I
really
think I
great
have one here.
pops, some really nostalgic pops. Um, Captain Hook and things like that
Got the
too. I
Captain
think
Hook
you have
one,
the
of
Captain Hook
course.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is that if we don't get some really awesome original Disney World beyond Disney or Magic Kingdom um,
Yeah.
merchandise, speaking from the pop field, I'm going to be really upset. And they're really thoughtful with even the packaging. Is that the 50th or the 65th anniversary Funko Pops had this like vintage look to them. They had a different versus
Hmm.
like the kind of like the normal white box. They had this distressed feel to them or look to them. That we like I said, we better get a Dreamfinder or I riot. I riot.
I saw someone's custom
Yeah.
Dreamfinder one time. They made it out of like they started with the base of the Monopoly Man, and it turned out
Oh,
really
nice.
good. You should go look it up if you get a chance.
Definitely. I really hope we get a pop ride of Dreamfinder in his like Zeppelin. I forget the name of the actual vehicle, but
Oh man, I want a
I would
Lego set
pay
of that.
double. Like if you also true that also needs to happen. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, and extraterrestrial. I'd love to see that. Some country bears merchandise would be cool. Um, and like I don't need it to be just from like day one attractions. I would love to see kind of the history of Walt Disney World showcased in all this merchandise. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think if they're gonna drill us with all the merchandise, then give us the merchandise we want.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Disney's been getting a lot better at that. Like, if you look at the last within the span of the last 10 years, as opposed to the 10 years before it, just within that 20-year span, you see them listening more and more to um, to those fans. I mean, even just look at over at Disneyland, you got Hatbox Ghost. I mean, uh, just that was a like almost a 30-year process, but they did listen to them, and I think especially from the last those last couple of
Yeah,
years, just the hype for that character got so big that they couldn't ignore it anymore. And hopefully something
yeah,
like that
and
similarly happens with
yeah,
Dreamfinder. But
and I hope you're right. And I think all that stuff happens at Disneyland because it's such a local park, and they have so
yeah,
many repeat guests every year. Whereas they kind of let Disney World kind of it's like forgotten a little bit because it is people coming once a year, once every 2 years. So everything seems fresh to them, even
that's
though
right.
it's been there for a long time. And so, um, and I hope you're right. I hope that we get some last minute additions, these kind of things that happen through the 18 months that we all will be excited to see when we go on our next trip, and to kind of build that hype, because right now there's not much hype. Um, Outside of yay it's the 50th. But I'm really hoping in the next couple months they really start blowing our socks off with announcements. I think now that the parks are back open to a much higher degree, and more
Yes.
people are coming than they have in the past year, that we get some really exciting things. And they have the budget now, and they have the manpower now to make sure that those things get executed to the best of their ability. And I think what they did, and I know we talked about the Caballeros earlier, but I think they're really that the analogy of the canary. They're the canary in the coal mine. Is that,
Coal mine.
yeah, the canary in the coal mine is because like they did some really awesome things with those animatronics, and we know that we now see the potential of what Imagineering can do in a short period of time, fixing those animatronics. And I hope that that happens throughout the whole park, the whole resort. Yeah, to these next, really the next year is really what I'm hoping, is that we get some really great refreshes the next year or 2 years now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a process.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of where we're gonna wrap it up today. I know that you have sort of a special connection to the 25th. Personally, I know that you, for your wife's 25th birthday, you did a really uh, neat birthday cake for her in celebration. So if you want to talk about that, and I guess some special piece of uh, memorabilia as well, if you want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I feel like since I met my wife, she she always loved the cake castle, and so she always said that she doesn't care really much for birthday parties and stuff, but she
Mm.
wants the cake castle like basically to be the theme for her 25th birthday.
Nice.
So I had always planned on uh, doing that one way or another. If I had to like hire someone to do it, I ended up making the cake castle cake myself.
Nice.
I got a base cake from Publix, but then I went out and I made it and stuff. But then the
Oh,
pièce de
cool.
résistance was I actually did get a piece of the plastic icing from the Cake Castle overlay, which I found it on
Yeah.
eBay, which like of course I was very leery about, but then I
Sure.
looked into it, sure it was legit, and as soon as I figured out it was legit, I'm like, we're done, this is it. So we actually have that hung up on our wall, and I will actually I'll see if I can post a picture of it to our Instagram,
Sure.
um,
That'd be awesome.
so the folks out there can see.
Yeah. So I guess my question for you is, how do you make sure that was legit? Because like that would definitely be like, because I've you shown it to me before, and like
Mhm.
if I didn't know that was legit, I'm like, that just looks like a piece of plastic. But what was like the process of that authentication? I guess.
Yeah. I did a deep dive on the person who was selling it. I also looked at
Oh,
other
cool.
things that they, were selling and compared that. But then I also just stared long and hard at the piece and then trying to piece together where it was. So I could tell that it's
Nice.
actually a seam that was
Sure.
I guess they had like this white icing
Uh-huh.
that kind of had this pink haze. So I could kind of spot where approximately it would have been because there are a couple spots that had that
Yeah.
pattern. But yeah, I mean, for all I know, possibly it could be fake.
Oh, that's awesome.
But
That's
a
awesome.
lot of the evidence is pointing at the
Yeah.
fact that
And
that
and and, and my
it is
question is,
legit.
yeah, I wonder how he got a hold of that. Like, how do you get a hold of something like that?
I don't know.
But
I
I
don't know.
love it. I
I
love
don't
it.
want to know.
That's so cool. I love real like niche kind of like real park stuff. Um,
Yeah.
it's such a like iconic or
If you
infamous
could have a
thing.
prop, what was
Yes,
that?
yes. So this is a great
Yeah.
question, and
Okay.
I did a Instagram Q&A a couple weeks ago, and that was one of the things someone asked me was like, what's one piece of park merchandise or something from the park? And my answer is, and it will continue to be this, is that I really want a Splash Mountain log. I want the whole log. I want the whole log, and I've seen them auctioned off before, and they go for a lot of money. Um,
Yeah.
because they typically if they retire them and they just get sold off or someone takes them and they eventually get into an
Hmm.
auction. Especially with the demise potentially looming for my favorite theme park attraction. I would love to have a piece of history or a big piece of history of that attraction. And the question that I got after that was like, what would you do with that? What would you do with Splash Mountain log, Matt? And for me, I would put it in my home bar or like my home. Well, like I plan to have a nice bar in my basement when my wife and I build our dream home or forever home eventually. And I want to put that in the corner, maybe turn it like a little. I wouldn't alter it anyway, but like if someone sit there and drink their beer at a party or something like that, I just want that. I just want a log. And if I don't have the means for that, which is potentially the case at that point, I would love just even the Brer Rabbit that's on the front of the log. I've seen those a lot in auctions, so even I would just love that piece would be enough for me. But the log is the kind of the holy grail, but the more attainable is the Brer Rabbit fixture on the front
All right.
of
You
of
heard
the
it here
Splash Mountain
first,
log.
folks. We're going to be starting a Patreon so he can get
Yes.
his stinking log.
Yeah. Whenever we start Patreon or monetizing this podcast, it's all going to the log fund.
Just straight for the log.
The
No,
log fund.
we're gonna get a one of those old Woody cars, and we're gonna get the Brer Rabbit, and that'll be the hood ornament,
Oh,
right
there
off
we
the
go.
front, and
There we go. There
that'll
we
be
go.
your ride.
Be perfect. Be
It'll
perfect. Be
kind of
perfect.
get that kind of wood oak look synergy.
Yes.
It's
I
great.
love that. I love that. Well, awesome, Mason.
It'll be our
Another great
wagon.
episode in the books. Like I plugged a minute ago, make sure you follow us on all of our social medias, Instagram, TikTok. I recently started posting on TikTok a little bit again, so make sure to follow me on there. I'm Matt Ardberry everywhere. Mason is Mason Betterly on Instagram, and then unofficial CEO, or yeah, unofficial Disney CEO on TikTok. And follow us on our YouTube as well. And we also have On the Hubgrass on Instagram as well. So follow us on all those social media platforms. We'll have all those linked below in the YouTube video, or if you're listening to us on one of your podcast apps, make sure you check into our bio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Make sure also subscribe to us on those of you choose to listen to the audio version as well. But once again, thanks for joining us on the Hubgrass, and we'll see you next time.
See you real soon.